Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We are the news division of United Network, and our mission is to bring you the real news. What's happening in our communities, what's happening in our states, our countries, our planet, and the entire multiverse. I know it's a lot of information to cover. And our network releases a lot of content throughout the week to keep you guys updated. That includes our in-depth news coverage, local stories as told through the eyes of our field messengers, and updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. And if you want more information about who we are, what we do, you can visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. Now, what you're listening to here, this podcast, what I try to do is take stories that we've talked about throughout the week, kind of the highlights, right? And give you guys that information because, like I said, we produce a lot of content. I know you guys are busy. And it's always great to, watch the actual videos when they come out. But if you miss something, this is a nice way to kind of get caught up on all of that. Also, if you would like to share UNN with somebody you know that maybe is not a member, then this is a great way to do that. So on our website, we have more information about our memberships, but our content goes out initially to our members first. And our members have access, they always have access to the content, but they'll have exclusive access for that first week. And then afterwards, we do post our videos to YouTube and Rumble. You can search for our channels, but there's no guarantee of what's going to stay up there, right? We sometimes straddle the line of trying to make sure the titles in our videos and stuff aren't going to be something that's flagged, but you just never know. I'm sure we are being watched by many, many people, both viewers and people that don't want this content to get out there. And so you just never know how long things will stay up. So if you want instant access to everything, head on over to our website, learn more about our membership program and what that looks like. With all the information that we give you guys, whether it's here on this podcast or throughout the videos we release throughout the week, I encourage you to always think critically and always ask questions. We're giving you information, but we're not trying to convince you of anything. If this is not for you, it's not going to resonate with you, take it or leave it. But even if you believe it, I suggest that you do more research, right? Search online, search up some of the places we talk about, some of the programs we talk about, because if you know what you're looking for, you can usually find bits and pieces of this online. And that actually leads me to our announcements. So as I'm recording this, I'm actually recording it probably the latest I've ever done a podcast episode. I usually try to get it done like early on Saturday, but we had news. The GIA report was released later on Saturday, and then I had some personal things going on, so I couldn't get to this until Sunday night. And today, Sunday, is May the 4th. And if you have wandered outside your house today, at least if you are in a country that's considered part of the West, definitely in the United States, then you have probably seen things that promote May the 4th, which is like May the Force, which comes from a very popular movie here in the U.S. called Star Wars, actually multiple movies. And what's interesting about this, kind of tying into doing your research, is did you know, and this is for real, that Star Wars, all of the series, all of the movies, and probably what they've got cartoons out there now, they've got a lot of different stuff, but it is actually based on real life events. It was based on the Orion War, and we do not have time to go into that, but if you want to think critically and do some research on your own, you can do that. There are people talking about it. And, I can't confirm that everything they say is going to be accurate. But yes, that's actually a real life story. And I think that's why humanity really, we're so attracted to these types of series. Are you a Trekkie or, are you for Star Wars, right? We have this thing kind of going back and forth. And I think we connect with it on a soul level. Maybe even some of us were part of these wars, who knows? And we don't even know why we like this stuff. We just really like it. We really like sci-fi because our spirit understands that this is real stuff. We like learning about other galaxies and other planets because we know that's really possible, even if our logical mind tells us we don't even know if anything else exists out there, any other life. Well, that's crazy, right? So anyways, may the 4th be with you. I like to say, may the source be with you, the source of all things, the source of all creation. And on that note, let's get to our stories. So here is the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Okay, let's kick things off with our incredible field messengers. And these are people that are just telling you stories of what's going on in their community. We think the best way to really get the word out there about what's happening on a day-to-day basis is for people to tell their own stories. We all have these cell phones or something similar to that, and it's real easy to just go out there and share from your perspective what you see. And this is how we're going to make this whole planet not seem so big. We're going to get to know each other better throughout, without the lens of whatever narrative they're trying to feed us, right? We can talk to each other. We can reestablish those relationships and really get to know more about each other and where we live. So our first report on Monday was from Wayne out of Arizona. That's a state in the U.S. And he takes us to a hemp workshop. It's the 2025 Tucson Hemp Festival. And this was a great event. The people looked like they were having a really good time. They got hands-on experience, did various activities like mixing hemp and lime to create blocks. And then they would set these blocks out there in the sun. And hemp blocks, it's incredible for insulation. You can also use it. The recipe is slightly different, but you can also use it in lieu of concrete. And there's amazing things to be done with hemp. Apparently, this was a 2-day event. Like I said, lots of education, lots of demo work. And I also thought it was interesting. They talked about how farmers who are currently growing hemp, there's something that's being done in the process where they're actually losing out of 60% of their crop. I feel like that's its own story. I might have to dig into that a little bit and see what in the world's going on there, because hemp is a great product. You can make a lot of things from it. And if we're losing 60% of our crop, that's not so good. But Wayne, thank you for showing us your hemp workshop and all the cool things that you learned. Diane out of Uganda shares a story about a group of people, and the acronym it's TUSC, so they call it TUSC, and that stands for Transport for Ugandan Sick Children. And this is a smaller charity. It's located in eastern Uganda, and they provide transportation for sick children, but not only children, pregnant mothers, and other people needing health care. And so Diane went in and she interviewed some of the people about the impact they're making in their community. They've been around for more than 13 years, and they're short of people that could really help, but they don't have the money to, fund a big operation. So it's kind of like, well, we'll start here. We'll see where it goes. We'll do what we can. And Diane asked them a little bit more about, well, what, if money wasn't an option, and you really wanted to care for your community, like, how many more people would you need? And it's clear that they're very short-staffed, but they are keeping at it, which is incredible. Sophia from Trinidad and Tobago. Well, this was really interesting. So we are in turtle season over there in Trinidad and Tobago. From March to August, this is where the world's largest sea turtles, which are known as the leatherbacks, return to nest. And this is really interesting. They nest in the beaches where they were born. Fascinating, right? And they actually connect to the beach through a magnetic field. So everything's frequency, right? And I don't even think we realize how much animals rely on this. And this is just one example of that. The turtles can sense where they were born and they go back when it's time to lay their eggs. And we got to see a lot of really cute turtles. I'm a turtle fan. I've always liked turtles. I've even had a turtle as a pet in the past. It was a long time ago, but I did. So if you want to see kind of their migratory route and them squirm around on the sand a little bit, it's super cute. Also learn a little bit more about how they lay their eggs and the hatchlings and how the babies come out, all that good stuff, then check out Sophia's report again on Monday. Then Liz out of North Carolina, she teaches us how to make matcha tea. So this is a powdered green tea, and it gives you an energy boost without all the jitters of coffee. And she makes a matcha latte. Very simple ingredients, and she uses a little bit of sweetener, and she adds, I think, some dairy to it, so she had some milk. Really easy to make. I've actually never had this before, but she says if it is possible for it to not turn out so well. I think she called it, could taste like swamp water. That does not sound good to me, but obviously how she makes it works for her. So if you want to follow her recipe and maybe learn a little bit more about matcha tea, check out that report. Amy out of New Jersey has a report, and she sometimes does these recipes, right? She's got to wear her pearls when she does her recipes. And this time she is making a frittata. And she points out that breakfast isn't just for morning. She likes to eat eggs throughout the day. So this is a veggie-packed cheesy sausage frittata that you could eat at any time during the day. Lots of flavor there. And she kind of compared it because I was like, I don't really know what a frittata is. Actually, I asked a friend of mine last night. We were out to dinner, and that was on the menu. And I'm like, what is a frittata? I don't even know what it is. And so she says it's kind of like a quiche, but you don't have the breading like you would have, like the crust part of a quiche. And, it's not exactly an omelet either. It's kind of like kind of like a cousin to the two. That would be one way to describe it. But her recipe looked really awesome. All right, Emma out of Spain takes us to the Carnival Parade. So this is the 2025 Fuerteventura Carnival. And Emma has talked about this before. So this is kind of another side to the carnival. It was a 10-day event. She calls it an explosion of color. Very, very creative people came together, and they always have a theme each year. This year was an Indian theme. So they dressed up like people from India, beautiful bright colors. You can imagine, the jewelry, the fancy gowns, all that fun stuff, and marched in this parade. So if you want to check that out. Also, lots of music and dancing. It just looked like a lot of fun. Okay, next story was actually from yours truly. So I've been talking about the fact that I needed to do a field messenger report on my bone broth that I have pretty much every morning. And so I finally did it, you guys. And I submitted the story, and it ran this past week. So if you want to know how to make a really simple bone broth recipe, oh my goodness, it's so good for you guys. I think I've shared this story before, but I've got 2 boys in my house who play football and are obsessed with trying to get as much protein in their diet as possible. And I cannot get them to drink this bone broth. But they'll eat 100 pounds of chicken a week, right? And it's like, what? You don't have to do that. There's other ways to get these incredible nutrients in your body. It supports your joints, your gut, your skin, your overall health. It boosts your immune system. And it's literally replaced coffee for me in the morning, except those mornings where I'm just like, oh, I don't even know if I can get out of bed. Then I might turn to caffeine. But for the most part, it's my bone broth. Okay, Danelle out of Colorado takes us country dancing. I almost said country line dancing. Nope, it is country dancing. And this is a competition that happens in Colorado. And there's classes, there's social dancing, there's a lot of good things that come out of it. And it attracts participants from all around the world. So she talks about the benefits of it. We get to see some people twirl their partner round and round, and it looked like a lot of fun. And finally, Deb out of Australia shows us how to groom a dog. So apparently she's a dog groomer. So she did the story, and as she was grooming a dog, she was explaining to us how she does it. Now, have you ever wondered, for those of you who have dogs, you drop your dog off at the dog groomer and you come back and your dog looks and smells amazing. I've often wondered how they do this. In fact, in the video, Deb is giving a haircut to a poodle. And I don't have a poodle, I have a golden doodle, which is a golden retriever and poodle mix. But she is primarily poodle with just a little bit of golden retriever. So I often wonder, how do they prop the dogs up? What do they get them to do? So it's kind of an interesting inside look as to what these dog groomers go through. And I don't know about you, but my dog loves getting her hair cut. Maybe not the exact process, but when she comes home, she is one happy dog. Here are some of the more in-depth news stories that the team and I worked on for you guys this week. Let's talk about women in India and how many of them, a very large portion of them, are being deserted by their spouses. So this is happening across rural villages, busy cities in India, and it is devastating. It is affecting millions of women who have been abandoned by their husbands without divorce or explanation, leaving them emotionally, financially, and socially unsupported. Desertion can stem from dowry disputes, the birth of daughters, because males are preferred, or husbands moving away for work and never returning, forcing these women into a painful limbo where they are neither fully married nor divorced. Many face financial hardships, social stigma, and the burden of raising children alone, often without access to legal rights or government aid due to lack of documentation. So I want to play some sound bites for you now of women who have been personally impacted by desertion.
Santosh Kaur was married for only 15 days when her husband suddenly left for the United States, leaving her behind. 7 years have passed since their wedding, but there is no sign of him. She now lives with her elderly mother and 2 siblings in the town of Ludhiana.
My whole family went into depression, but we didn't show it to one another. All of us used to cry, and nobody cared for me and asked me how I felt. People used to make fun of me by asking, "When is your husband coming back?"
While the Indian government and NGOs have introduced some support measures for these women, gaps remain, and true change will require stronger laws, better data collection, and a shift toward empathy and respect for these women's dignity and struggles. Cameroon's waste management crisis, especially in Yaoundé, continues to pose serious health and environmental risks, despite recent efforts by the government and private companies to address it. Now, back in February 2025, the Prime Minister demanded a swift sanitation plan, but many residents fear it's just another temporary solution timed around upcoming elections. You know how they like to do that. Poor equipment, limited resources, and inconsistent enforcement of waste laws have worsened the situation, while recycling efforts remain minimal. Again, here are some people who have been impacted by the waste issues in Cameroon.
The waste is really disturbing. It makes the population sick. Whenever I am in my workshop, especially when rain is falling, I cannot work properly. People just dispose dirt randomly without care. We have spoken to the council about this issue, hoping for a change. Up till now, my apprentice is still suffering from malaria.
We have faced a lot of problems because of this issue. The water carries the dirt that are piled up, such as containers, and fill up gutters, causing mosquitoes to accumulate. I propose that 2 or 3 times a week, the gutters should be cleaned and people should enable to dispose their waste properly.
This odor, gotten from careless displacement of waste, makes my customers uncomfortable, causing my business to slow down.
Although Hisacam, which is the main waste management company in Cameroon, is investing in new trucks, and they also plan door-to-door collection, chronic issues like funding shortfalls and delayed payments threaten the sustainability of these improvements. Private domestic adoption in the U.S. is a deeply emotional yet often troubled process plagued by high costs, profit-driven agencies, deceptive practices, and a lack of protections for both birth parents and adoptive families alike. With millions of couples hoping to adopt and too few infants available, competition and desperation have fueled unethical behaviors, such as exploitative marketing practices, targeting vulnerable pregnant women, and occasional adoption scams that leave families heartbroken.
Advocates say that money is the root of many of the problems in private adoption.
If you're a legislator and you think, yeah, $50,000 for an adoption, that sounds fine. Seems reasonable. If that's what you think, then you've missed the whole argument about the problem with mixing money with human beings. You've missed the whole argument about how coercive that can be. You've missed the whole argument about how many people that eliminates as possible parents who might make very good parents. You've missed the whole argument about how kids who grow up feel about being commodified. You've missed all of that. This lack of education and understanding is a real problem in trying to get to a better place.
Although there are calls for reform, ranging from federal oversight to better legal support for birth parents, progress has been slow, and many systemic issues continue to prioritize profits over the well-being of everyone involved, especially the children. Well, this last week was Noise Pollution Awareness Day. Well, not the whole week. I guess just a day out of last week. I can't remember which one. I think it was Wednesday, actually. And this highlights the growing concern over how constant noise from traffic, construction, and industrial activities impacts both human health and the environment. In fact, prolonged exposure to loud sounds can lead to serious health problems like high blood pressure, stress, and even heart attacks, while also disrupting communication, learning, and productivity.
Over 1 out of 5 Europeans are exposed to harmful long-term noise from road, rail, and air transport. Living in an area affected by transport noise is associated with an increased risk of developing a wide range of health issues, including cardiovascular, metabolic, and mental health diseases. It is estimated that the same proportion of children is also exposed to levels of noise that can have detrimental effects on their learning development. In Europe, nearly 550,000 cases of reading ability impairment each year are attributed to environmental transport noise. More than 80% of these cases result from road traffic noise, followed by 15% from rail traffic and about 1% from air transport. Almost 60,000 cases of behavioral difficulties annually are also due to environmental transport noise in Europe, where about 86% of cases are due to road traffic noise.
And it's not just impacting people. Wildlife suffer too, as excessive noise interferes with vital behaviors in both marine and land animals, threatening ecosystems and species survival. Beyond health and environmental costs, noise pollution also harms the economy by lowering property values and reducing workplace efficiency. While this problem is widespread, simple solutions like quieter transportation, better urban design, and spending more time in nature can help reduce its impact. Well, you've heard about the huge federal layoffs in the U.S. This is impacting tens of thousands of workers, sparking concerns about rising unemployment, economic instability, and disruptions to key government services. With around 222,000 jobs reportedly lost so far, roles like regulatory officers, scientists, and administrative staff are amongst the hardest hit, while contractors and states dependent on federal funding are also feeling the strain. And now people are turning to social media to vent their frustration.
Hello. I was a federal worker.
I was one of the thousands of federal workers terminated this weekend. Let's talk about it.
Literally every single day, it's something. Every single day, I am waking up and dreading going to work because I don't know if I'm going to have a job or not.
And I wanted to come on here as one of the thousands of federal employees who lost their job with the federal government this weekend. I was removed from my position through an email from an unrecognized HR account from my agency around 1 p.m. on Saturday. I have gone through the entire range of emotions this past weekend. There is a lot of sadness in my heart. There is also a lot of anger.
I served 14 years in the Air Force. I was a federal employee for over 6 years. That's over 20 years of my life working for the federal government. And I was recently fired by Donald Trump because I was on supervisor probation. So I was already tenured.
I'm utterly devastated. I'm confused because my recent performance evaluation was exceptional and I got upwards of $1,500 as a bonus because my performance was so good. And this was my dream job. And it's just being taken away by an administration who doesn't care about science. It doesn't care about people who might be homeless.
The Merit Systems Protection Board has temporarily reinstated some employees while investigating legal challenges, but many workers are struggling with delayed unemployment benefits and complicated buyout offers that may disqualify them from future aid. As layoffs climb and hiring slows, more displaced workers are turning to freelancing, entrepreneurship, and further education, though uncertainty and poor communication continue to weigh heavily on the labor market. In March 2025, thousands gathered in southern Ethiopia to celebrate the Gada ceremony, a centuries-old democratic tradition marking the peaceful transfer of power within the Borana community. The week-long festival features traditional dances, legislative updates, and community-led decision-making, culminating in the symbolic handover of leadership through the transfer of a feather.
Borana community in Kenya and Ethiopia have welcomed the 72nd king of the community in an elaborate coronation ceremony held in southern Ethiopia and attended by hundreds of Kenyans and Ethiopian nationals. Abba Gada Guyo Boru Guyo becomes the 72nd Bali Gada after the reign of Kura Jaso Kura came to an end after 8 years. Leaders have hailed the historic event, saying it is a step in the right direction in keeping the community together for over 500 years.
Women also play vital roles in these celebrations, leading peace processions and participating in community meetings, while boys are initiated early into leadership training. The newly installed 72nd Abba Gada, chosen for his leadership potential since his teens, will guide the Borana people for the next 8 years, continuing a vibrant tradition that emphasizes unity, governance, and cultural preservation. Starting May 7th, 2025, so just a few days from now, anyone flying domestically in the U.S. will need a real ID or another TSA-approved form of identification to board a plane as part of the long-delayed effort to tighten security after 9/11. A real ID is a state-issued, federally compliant card marked with either a gold or a black star, or in California, it's a bear. I don't know why California is special, but apparently my real ID has a bear on it. But those won't work for international travel. Critics argue it does little to prevent terrorism, raises privacy concerns by linking personal data to a national system, and creates extra hurdles for people like married women with name changes.
I know a lot of libertarian people who have serious privacy concerns both about whether hackers will actually be able to penetrate that database and get your information. And then Thomas Massey's point is very well taken that what this is not, again, we're doing security theater. We're doing still, however, 20 years later, 25 years later, we're still doing 9/11 based security theater, doing things that are more restrictive, more difficult, more burdensome, more inconvenient for Americans because national security and safety, with no shred of evidence, this is going to help protect against terrorism or anything of that nature. The TSA itself is the textbook example of this. The entire agency should be abolished. Paging Dr. Elon Musk to the Doge operating room. I want TSA gone. It is a abhorrent waste of money and inefficient and doesn't contribute to our safety whatsoever.
While alternatives like passports are accepted, the TSA warns travelers should expect delays or even denial at security checkpoints if they don't have proper ID after this deadline. South Africa is grappling with widespread corruption, crime, and violence fueled by powerful mafia-style gangs that have infiltrated nearly every sector, from construction and small businesses to private security firms. A new report to Parliament reveals that organized crime has expanded into illegal mining, political assassinations, and extortion, with some police even colluding with criminals. Economic stagnation, inequality, and weak state institutions have left a power vacuum that syndicates now exploit, while the booming but poorly regulated private security industry has been partially hijacked by criminal groups.
Not a week goes by without someone in South Africa being assassinated. In 2022 alone, 141 assassinations were recorded by the Global Initiative. That's an average of more than 2 a week. And even that is probably an undercount, given the limited sources of data. In some cases, targeted killings allow criminal groups to influence politics or gain control of lucrative markets. Some assassinations are intended to silence and intimidate whistleblowers and journalists. But most of the hits recorded by the Global Initiative between 2000 and 2022 were linked to the taxi industry. The largely unregulated taxi industry is a lifeline for millions of South Africa's commuters. It is low cost and serves many areas not covered by official public transport networks. But it is also controlled by mafia-like associations who extort their drivers and compete for control over lucrative routes. Taxi-related violence ranges from shootouts at taxi ranks to targeted hits on large, influential players in the industry.
At the National Construction Summit, the government pledged to crack down with tougher regulations and better crime response strategies, aiming to protect businesses and rebuild public trust. And our final story is about Iraq and how they are facing a severe healthcare crisis right now. This comes after decades of war, corruption, and political instability, which has left the system broken and pharmacy shelves empty. Once a regional leader, Iraq's healthcare began to collapse after the 2003 U.S. invasion, worsened by the loss of medical professionals and crumbling infrastructure. Today, about 35% of medicines are either counterfeit or smuggled into Iraq due to weak regulation and supply chain failures, putting many lives at risk. Here's a dad talking about how it's impacting his child.
I just want treatment for Mustafa. That's all I want. I've tried everything I could, but it was all in vain. We can only do very little for him at the moment. We've reached rock bottom, and our morale is down. We are beyond tired. When you watch your son in such a state, groaning in pain day and night, and he can't sleep, what should I do? There's nothing I can do.
Although the government has announced plans to build pharmaceutical plants and digitize drug tracking, real progress is slow, and deep corruption remains a barrier. A recent $374 million deal with China to build a major medical city in the Dakar province, well, that's offering some hope, but many Iraqis remain skeptical about foreign influence and whether it will truly fix the broken system. Okay, now it's time for updates from the GIA report. And Kimberly Gogan is the head of the Global Intelligence Agency. What better person to give us the updates of what the agency is doing, what they're working on, and what's really happening behind the scenes here. So tons of information was released this week, and I don't have time to play sound bites for everything. So again, this would be a good week to go back and listen to the report that was released on Monday, and then we had another report released on Saturday. Let's start with Monday's report. The soundbite that I want to play for you is, we talked a little bit about this last week with the smiley face alignment. Remember I said, You can't make this stuff up. The deep state's looking for a smiley face in the sky, and suddenly that's going to give them control of the financial system? Are you kidding me? Well, there's other things that they may have been looking for as well. So I want to play this soundbite, and this also ties into a breaking news report that we had last week about the power outage in Spain and Portugal. So Kim wanted to better explain what in the world was going on. And this also ties into something called the cosmic central sun. Now, that sounds like a good thing, right? Because we know the sun, we know source, energy from source, the creator of the universe, comes through our sun. But the cosmic central sun, that's actually artificial and not so good. So here's Kim to explain it all.
So we talked quite a bit on the weekend about the smiley face alignment. And the smiley face alignment, was also tied to the alignment of a number of other things, which, let's just say, maybe worked a little bit at half-mast this weekend before they were discovered. And their hope was to gain some control over Earth's computer systems. That was their hope. And of course, for them, every single thing they find is always tied to money and financial control. That's all they care about is financial control. Also, they would like to have some aliens come to Earth and help them out a little bit. They're kind of struggling on their own. They missed the mark earlier this weekend, or on the 25th, which was supposed to get them some help, at least so they thought. That help did not come. However, those that came before them, meaning folks that are not, let's just say, human, did have some things that were supposed to be triggered along, let's just say during the new moon that followed the smiley face, which occurred yesterday. And let's just say it's been a torturous last 24 hours until we managed to clean up the mess. As for them, they managed to get their hands on some kind of limited access to this for a short period of time. It probably started around late afternoon yesterday, my time, and continued on all night long. And I know that because I've been up all night long cleaning up the mess. They don't really know what this stuff does. And of course, for them, they think it's, money's going to come out. If we push all these buttons, money is going to come out. And wow, look at the amazing things we could possibly do with this. Well, money didn't come out immediately. So they started playing around and pushing a bunch of buttons on some space junk they knew nothing about. But today they're going to learn about that. And I'm going to tell you about it as well. This pushing of erratic buttons also resulted in a major power outage across all of Europe. And, not all of Europe, I guess you could say. Portugal, Spain, parts of Germany. Most of that has been recovered at this moment, as far as I know. There might be a few small areas still yet to regain power. But all of these outages were due to a bunch of Duck Dynasty people trying to operate some equipment they know nothing, absolutely nothing about. Now, they figured out when they made the little boo-boo and happened to knock out power in several countries that they could do a lot more of hacking. Now, because these people are very haphazard, very immature, and probably smoking something that you and I probably don't smoke, I wouldn't even, I don't even know if you smoke. I don't know how you get that kind of a drug. But they thought the next greatest hack that they could possibly do was to hack into all of the cell phone networks, as well as the Bluetooth networks worldwide. They thought that they would play some games and look at people's cameras and see what people were doing with their cell phones, near their cell phones. And this probably got their rocks off because they didn't seem to do much else. Probably they had planned on hooking it up to some kind of a frequency network and maybe blowing some people's minds. They joked around about, we're men in black and we're going to wipe your memory and all of this kind of stuff and just really mess around with humans. That's pretty much what they were talking about behind the scenes. They also wanted to hack into people's headphones, most specifically the Apple AirPods and other Bluetooth devices, so that they could send subliminal messages through your Bluetooth over the last 24 hours. So they've had some fun for a short period of time today, probably a total of less than 6 to 8 hours before we were able to completely dismantle the system and their access. But this system could have done a lot more harm than that. So let's talk about a few things as to what this system was, what it was actually meant to do, how it kind of worked a little bit autonomously for a long time. And this particular access was not actually something that they got themselves. You see, the bloodlines attached to the folks, the fallen ones that they were expecting to show up this weekend, might have left a little bit of something that came on in the last 24, 48 hours so that they could get the help of their bloodlines to fight the rest of the humans on Earth while they were fighting each other for world domination, I guess. And that's what was triggered in the last 24 hours. Now, minimal access for them means a lot to us as humans. So therefore, getting all of these alarms going off at, very early this morning, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock this morning wasn't necessarily entirely due to them. It was more to do with universal structures having issues based on what everybody else left. Yes, they managed to cause some disturbances because there were some other things we were more concerned with. So, in order to really explain to you what this actually does, first we have to talk about something called the cosmic central sun. Now, if you have been around in the alternative media for a while, not just the whistleblower section, you probably have heard about something called the cosmic central sun. Now, we automatically think when it's talked about, whether it be in the Ascension Glossary or in other circles, that there is one cosmic central sun. Matter of fact, the deep state thought there was one cosmic central sun. They also felt that there may have been a cosmic central moon, which there was not. However, the universal networks or omniversal networks are actually tied to our sun and our moon, but also to every other planet within our galaxy. Now, cosmic central suns are artificial. They have nothing to do with source. If anything, there were structures in place in and around source that would mirror the point of creation and reverse it in many places throughout the multiverse. Cosmic central suns are not tied to other star systems per se. They are, but they are not located within other star systems. And they are set up to be artificial alignments with, let's call it, anti-source. So a network based on false dark, false light, false neutral, technical sources of creation. These central suns were not stagnant, meaning they did not stay in one place. They are kind of like your personal assemblage points when it comes to the dark and the light. You have a natural assemblage point, and the way black magic on this planet used to work is that they used to play with artificial assemblage points which were tied to false light and false dark, as did universal points move around. So we did have, as human beings, we did have some connection to these central suns as well, which allowed for certain alignments, whether it be in your birth sign and a zodiac sign, or a constellation, or other parts of the omniverse that were connected to artificial intelligence systems that were meant to manipulate Earth, and therefore you. Remember, we were also collateral for these people, and we powered a lot of AI systems throughout the ages that were not set up by humans. So the alignment that it appears that they have been looking for is an alignment with a cosmic central sun, the particular one that occurs regularly. These alignments occur regularly, so this is not really a new thing. But in this particular case, because of the war that everybody was expecting to continue on Earth recently, which would have been on Friday, there was a whole lot of mechanisms that were set in motion that normally do not occur when one of these central suns aligns with our sun, our moon, or the Earth. And in numbers, you could say that there are an infinite number of central suns created for multiple purposes that our deep state here knows nothing about, and that is obvious. Now, you've probably heard some stories, if you haven't. There's some talk on the internet about the fact that the Last Supper, with the person being, as Jesus and some apostles, there were some stones. So if you look it up on the internet, they call it, I think it's moldite. It's a green crystal-looking stone. They claim that he brought that to the Last Supper, and that stone was supposed to be Lucifer's stone. This is the story they tell on the internet about these stones. But in fact, it is not a known mineral to us, or crystal, or quartz, or anything like that we know here on Earth. There are multiple stones that are special. They do not come from Lucifer, although many different groups of people, non-people I should say, because really people weren't involved in this, deep state or otherwise, who have tried to control these stones, and with good reason. So in total, there are 13 of these stones that existed within planet Earth. They were not carried around to different locations, ever. And originally, these stones were what Source refers to as his crown of glory. And these stones originally, and still are, at least all the original ones, are located around the core of Earth. So they are not reachable technically by humans, secret space program folks. They could not move them. Matter of fact, because of their protection, they were not accessible by anyone. So all they could really do, much like other types of stones of this nature, all they could really do was change the energy within the stones, which did happen. And it happened by 3 separate groups, actually, over a period of time. So we'll talk about that in a sec. So let's continue talking about the stones and what they did. Originally, on the creation of Earth, these stones, all 13 stones, were filled with Source's golden life force. These particular stones became anchors for Source. Not only that, they were surrounding what we call the point of creation, which was created within Earth. They served as a protection for the soul of Earth, so to speak, and they were also conductors of life force to not only permeate throughout Earth, but also they were connected to Source itself. They also would reflect on the kingdom coins that we talked about this weekend and continue to write the language of Source, or the DNA blueprint, as you call it. DNA, RNA, GNA, and other types of blueprints for the entire multiverse, as Earth was a keystone planet. Somewhere along the way, as Earth was tortured, meaning we had many wars here, the first person to create various overlays on these stones was Anu. You may have remembered me talking about Anu for a long time. Anu was Marduk's grandfather, so to speak, if we were to look at them the same way we look at people in generations. Anu was a being that came here and during one of the many wars we had with the Draco and quote unquote conquered Earth and humanity. He was the first one to take the life force out of the stones and replace it with colored life force, which went to then on to create the first part of infinite central suns around the multiverse. So it was a way to use Earth once again in order to create various other, let's say, artificial intelligence, cosmic central suns around the multiverse. He wasn't the only one, though. Later on in history, we also had Marduk, Enki, and Enlil do the same. In this particular case, they couldn't make the full adjustment to the crown of glory stones, so to speak. So what they did, where Anu went on the inside and was pushing out other types of energy into these stones, Marduk, Enki, and Enlil decided to conquer Anu's conquering. I know these people love to conquer the conquering of the conquer, and surround those central suns so that they couldn't do anything without their permission. Isn't that funny? And then other systems were created throughout the omniverse, universe, Earth, and otherwise connected to these varying central suns. There were other people that had access to these omniversal and universal systems, such as Artemis. Over the years, of course, Lucifer had some partnership agreements with both, and then created third layers of central suns within central suns. That's a lot of conquering of conquering, conquerors conquering. They like that, apparently, on their side of things. And nobody trusts anybody on their side either. So they must create all of these points, so to speak, so that they can't operate without the other. You know, who trusts the demon? You know, maybe the deep state does, because they were certainly on that like white on rice this last night anyway. So these networks, because these central suns are what we would call fluid, planets are constantly moving, galaxies are constantly moving, nebulas are constantly moving, the universe is constantly in motion, and nothing is stagnant. On occasion, some of these central suns would align with our moon, our sun, and our Earth, and then trigger certain networks to work, and then trigger those stones from the outside in. Because the energy in there was corrupted and meant to match by color, so we had black, white, gray or silver, purple, blue, red, orange, yellow, green, brown or amber, and we also had black gold, neutral gold, and false light gold as well. So that made up your 13 stones. So at different times, different alignments, different times of year, even on Earth, these stones would align with one of these cosmic central suns and create, well, havoc here on Earth, or allowed them to utilize the creative powers of the crown of glory to do certain things. One of those times was last night. And this was more to do with the ending of an alignment with Pluto, Mars, and Earth. So Mars, we know as the red planet, and Mars was more aligned with the red stone. And what we saw happening was an attempt to access the causal density or causal plane of the universe. Now, when we're talking colors, as always, we're talking about spaces in between existence. There was a complete and total failure to access those planes of existence. Now, interesting thing that the deep state doesn't understand about these crystals, but something that Marduk, Enki, Enlil, and Anu, and Lucifer knew very, very well was that these crystals were what you call living crystals. So we often sometimes, as humans, we use crystals and various stones for a lot of different reasons. We know that they can clean energy. We know that they can hold energy. And each crystal has a different frequency and vibration to it, and they're not all the same. So we use them for different purposes when we do healings and things like that. These particular stones, however, are what we call living stones, which hold what we call living water or the life force of source. Now, even though they managed to change the essence and maybe some energy based on the Amenti agreements and Emerald Order covenants and all of these lovely things that happened about 250,000 years ago. And there was still some tinkering that happened even earlier, more than 3 million years ago, to these stones, still because they were a part of Source's creation, they never lost its soul. So this as one object, just like every other living being throughout the multiverse, it has a soul. These were organically made. So because they cannot interfere and have never figured out how to tinker, let's say, with a soul, they were unable to infect the soul of these crystals as well. This is an important thing to understand because when the attempt happened last night, due to an alignment with the cosmic sun and the ridiculous humans that walk this planet we call the deep state, that have no understanding of what they're tinkering with, and somehow getting some limited access to this, rather excitedly so to speak, let's just say there was some immediate damage control that had to be done. Now, much like I have talked to you about accessing source through the soul, because it's one communication that they can't interfere with, that connection being reestablished kind of wiped out that possibility of them being able to use these stones in any other way like their non-human predecessors did within a short period of time. So havoc, yes, today, not as bad as it could have been if we hadn't done damage control all night long last night.
Yeah, so Kim and her team have been very busy, so much so that on Wednesday, she gave us a statement because there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, so let me read to you the statement that Kim put out on Wednesday. Tonight is the last night of the possible timeline extension reboot. The process was left upended because there was no participation from our side, meaning a possible timeline reboot would have taken both the dark and the light side of Earth's management, in quotes, in the past. Now that we are on the guardian management of Earth's side, it would be us that decides to address the Universal Council if we felt humanity needed more time, which we do not. Once a decision was made in the past, 5 councils must agree. The deep state, however, feels they should be able to make a decision on their own, which has caused some disturbances. In today's council meeting, so that would have been Wednesday's council meeting, she says, we have all agreed to remove the system set in place for a once every 7-year cycle of review. This should take us most of tonight. I will give you a full update as to the results and what humanity can expect. All right, so fast forward to Friday. Things were still crazy. So Kim ended up putting up an update, I believe Saturday afternoon, maybe kind of into the evening. I mentioned earlier, usually I record the rundown on like Saturday morning. So this is why this is a little bit late because I had some other stuff going on this weekend. But yeah, we got it out. Yay. So let's talk about what she discussed on Saturday. Lots of stuff. She talked about Trump. She talked about conclave starting this Wednesday. We know, actually, we don't know what's going to happen with that. Who knows what's going to happen with conclave? We know that Trump thinks he's Pope or wants to be Pope. Have you seen these memes out there? It's insane. He's even telling reporters that he should be the next Pope. I mean, give me a break. Not that I'm a fan of the Pope, okay? I wish the whole thing would go away, but certainly don't want an orange Pope. Well, we have a white Pope, we have a black Pope, and then we have now what? An orange Pope. With Trump. All right, what I do want to talk about, and the soundbite I do want to play, has to do with something Kim mentioned in that last little blurb, the update, which is the Universal Council. And we've talked about the Universal Council before, but what is at the heart of this is the council. How do I explain this? The council is trying to figure out, what does humanity want? And you don't have to actually ask humanity, because when you are at that level, you can tap into the collective, right? And you can sense through frequency, vibration, maybe even telepathy a little bit, to be able to tell what is really going on in the minds of humanity. Because the goal is to get people to choose the light, but sometimes, just shoving the light in someone's face, that doesn't really work. Sometimes we have to go through experiences, right? And we've got to learn. And so this next soundbite is a really interesting explanation of what that process is like, what the Universal Council did, meaning how they determined whether or not humanity was ready to move forward. And we're also going to talk about timeline jumping and rebooting. Because as Kim said in that little blurb, she said, listen, this system set in place for once every 7-year cycle of review. So every 7 years, we would have this option of jumping timelines, rebooting timelines, extending timelines. And Kim's going to break this down for us so we understand what's going on right now, because this was another time that we could have had an adjustment to our timeline, depending on what humanity wanted, which is the question the Universal Council had. All right, and they made a decision along with Kim's influence. So here is Kim talking about the council, talking about how they determined what humanity wanted, and then also talking about timelines and how this was a really crucial time for us to figure out, what did we want?
So we know on the 12th of April, there is a council meeting. That is a universal council meeting, has nothing to do with the deep state. They were not invited, as you know, and we talked about this. And at that point in time, there was more of a review on humanity as a whole, where we're going, and are we capable of living currently in a golden age? And as a majority, if you take humanity as a whole, we are all basically waiting for something positive to happen. That has been ascertained, number one. Number two, they believe that there are enough people awake and aware of what is happening on this planet to effectuate change, albeit some of them believe that change is going to come through the deep state or orange people, orange men. But that is not exactly how the change is going to take place. And quite frankly, people don't actually care. There are a lot of people that follow them mainly because of the promises that they've made to everyone, saying Nasara Jassara is coming. You know, it's been coming for 25 years now. And, you know, and no one's made a move to do anything, and they believe this is their guy. And it's someone they can see on TV, and because of the position that person holds, they believe that this is a credible source of information. However, bottom line is, when the council had done their review of humanity, they had looked at what people really truly want. You know, it's not hard when you have a lot of, let's just say, special equipment, for them to actually look at people and figure out what telepathically they are desiring and what it is they want to do. And as a whole, humanity would just like a positive change in this world. And quite frankly, if it doesn't come from orange people, that is okay, as long as it comes and it happens. And they would flip sides from paying attention to presidents and heads of state in a heartbeat if this were to take place. And there were a certain amount of events, and everybody's version of what they thought change would be was a little bit different. But there were some key factors that came into play as it relates to change. You know, some are more awake and aware than others. They would like to have an encounter with non-humans. Other people want to have a better work life, a better earth, and meaning less pollution. They would like to have better food choices and food sources, and they would like to be able to not struggle if their family needs medical care and all of these types of things. So, you know, there were some definite key factors. They'd like to see cures for disease. That's another thing that came up. They would like to see cures for cancer and all of these types of things. Now, if we know it on our side of things, I am sure, not even guessing here, to some degree, the deep state also knows people's desires. There has been technology for years. It's currently utilized within intelligence agencies where essentially they can read brain waves to know whether or not you're telling the truth. Also, this is the newer version of lie detector tests. They don't do it like they do in the movies anymore. They also are aware of how people think, what they think when they're watching speeches and reading news reports and watching YouTube and those types of things, because they do have access to that type of technology. So oftentimes what you see the Q crew, et al., spit out is actually what people desire. It's not hard to read. They feed you a bunch of stuff so that you will glorify the stuff. And I say stuff, you know what kind of word I'm using in my head, right? So little 4-letter word. But they feed you the stuff so that you will follow them. And for lack of a better term, even for some people, they worship them, knowingly or unknowingly, through orange people or otherwise. This also comes and is utilized in religions and with religious leaders, not only the Pope, but also other major religious leaders in the world. What do people want to hear, and what do they need to hear right now? And this makes certain religions, including Islam and others, very popular amongst people. So this technology can also be utilized by our side to determine readiness to move forward into a non-holographic reality, so to speak? Are we ready to move into sovereignty and reality? It's going to take a lot of work, and we all know that. If you're watching this, probably not as much, but for most people, the average everyday normies, as we call them, they are going to need some time and some work to really truly understand how to live in a different way. It's going to be very confusing for them. We know this, and we figure we have a plan that will work. Within 7 to 10 years, we will see people change. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to have to wait 7 to 10 years to move forward, thank God, but it's going to take 7 to 10 years of that forward movement to get people to settle in and understand something new. And this is going to be something really new to humanity. We've talked about things like systems and work schedules and employment and how money moves and how money is earned and opportunities for education and what kind of education do we need to have, because right now our educational systems pretty much in every country are terrible. So we've talked a lot about that, and a lot of those concepts and different ideas will be presented through our New Earth series that we have coming up in the future. So you are familiar with New Earth a little bit. We used to have little excerpts that existed in the news, and we felt that wasn't enough. So we expanded on this series and have come up with some pretty amazing topics and have talked to a lot of pretty amazing people. And we've got a few episodes all ready to go, and we should be launching that in the very near future. But you're going to learn a lot about concepts and different ways of doing things, not only from us, but also from people that we've found that are just amazing people who are doing it. So this is going to be great. But we talked a lot about these things with the council too. Now, part of the reason why we discuss these things is because we have had in the past what we call a timeline reboot. We have also had a timeline jump, and we have had times where timelines were extended in the past based on our former leaders, as like Marduk and others like that, who suggested that this would be a really good idea. So timeline jumping and rebooting is not as easy as it seems as it relates to Earth and humans. We have a lot of you questioning things based on the fact that jumping timelines or rebooting timelines isn't necessarily foolproof based on manipulation that has happened in the past from AI systems and AI systems that have been driven by those, and mostly dark folks, that did not want humanity to learn and to grow. Some of the examples that you personally probably have witnessed are things like the Mandela effect. One moment our books say, X, Y, and Z, and the next moment they don't. We have television personalities that have, we know used to dress like this or say certain things, and they're not like that in this current timeline or now all of a sudden. We remember events from history, and that's not how we remember them. And if we remember them differently, we're often told that we're crazy. Or, they give you a little zap to the brain or a scrubbing of the internet, and then you can never prove that what you think to be correct is actually correct. For those of you that study the way that nature works and seasons and how seasons work, that might even be a little bit different for you. So we've noticed a lot of inconsistencies throughout our history, especially after the last reboot. Now, the reason why we notice those inconsistencies is because even as recent as 2018, the last time the reboot, so to speak, happened, we've noticed a lot more. Humanity has woken up a lot more. Even before 2018, the last reboot before that was in the early 2000s, so about 2003 or so, 2002. And sometimes the deep state is aware that these things happen, and sometimes they are not aware that these things happen, because nobody on that level of global governance gave a rat's booty less about the deep state and what they want and what they don't want. I know the council certainly could care less, but there are certain things that the council felt back at that time that were becoming available in the near future. Therefore, if they could just hold humanity off for a short period of time, they felt that there would be upcoming events based on their calculations, and there are many things that come into play with their calculations, not just humans, where we would have a perfect opportunity after 2018 to change time in totality. And if you look back and you listen to some of the old reports, whether that was Life Force reports or World Situation reports or Global Intelligence Agency reports, and even reports that others are making on YouTube and in other places as it relates to changes that are taking place, you will see that much has happened since 2018. Many, many events have come to pass. The council has oftentimes helped with that. We also have the enforcer here, and we have others that have helped humanity to grow and learn and wake up. And waking up humanity actually is. Even, your former naysaying normie friends are starting to ask questions. And that is because we are in a changing time, and your mind is becoming your own, and we don't have as much manipulation as far as our mind, body, and soul are concerned. So that will happen a lot more frequently in the near future. But let's talk about what happens when a timeline is moved or rebooted. So in the past, let's take, for example, in 1996. 1996 was another time of an actual timeline move, so to speak, meaning we moved from a dark timeline to a neutral timeline at that time. We were literally on the verge of moving to a light timeline when this whole rebooting process took place, which would have given humanity a lot more sovereignty, and we could have changed more systems unto ourselves if we were not jumping timelines all the time. Because a few other things take place during a timeline change. So in 1996, it was a full timeline change. We actually moved from one trajectory to another trajectory. Now, this event in 1996 was triggered by an AI-generated quote-unquote alien invasion. And I know when I say that to you, and all of you were most likely alive in 1996, you'll say, hey, Kim, you're crazy. There's been no alien invasion. Now, whether it happened on the physical plane or on the causal plane or on the etherical level, it doesn't really matter to the system that used to trigger things that would mandate a timeline jump. So in 1996, pretty much all of humanity had a interesting experience. So first thing that takes place when a timeline jump happens is the records of Earth are uploaded into an AI holographic simulation we call a timeline. The information that is uploaded is related to what does the world look like? What buildings are in place? What buildings were torn down? What land existed? What land didn't exist? What events took place in our history that people will actually have a memory of? That type of thing. And I'll explain here in a few moments how that is done. But all the information is uploaded into an AI system, and a simulation is created based on not at that time, we had less humans, but based on billions of humans that walk the planet and all of our alleged technological innovations. At the time, when we were on the verge of moving into a system with more freedom, humans are also modified, meaning we live shorter lifespans as a whole, not in general, but in general, as I should say, we live shorter lifespans. Our brain capacities are reduced back to 10 to 15% on average. Our strength is weakened. Programs are developed for our harm, such as food sources, other things that we rely on to stay alive. Medical care is also changed, and typically at the end of the download, so to speak, of information, other information comes out to our former world government folks. And in order to carry out those suggestions to hold humanity back, so to speak, there is often money that comes along with those things and orders and instructions for the next 7 years. We've talked about the 7-year cycles before. Those orders and instructions came in part from the council. So we have orders and instructions from the light side, and we have orders and instructions that would come from the dark side because we moved into a neutral timeline, so to speak. And those orders that come out are often subject to our then world government or world leaders, which were not human. And I know that's very disappointing to our deep state friends at the SSP and elsewhere, but you were not included. Then those folks would then have a meeting and they would determine on what they could do to kind of live in the gray. They never like to do positive things to humanity, and they need to hold us back as much as possible because, let's face it, we make great cattle. If the cattle were allowed to roam free and eat what they want and do what they want and procreate when they wanted and all of those types of things, hey, they're not controllable now, are they? And they wouldn't be giving the milk we call loosh. So it was very important for them to hold us back at that time. So the fake AI created alien invasion allowed for that to happen. Another time that happened was in 2018, but this time it was not a jumping of timelines. This time it was an extension of a timeline, for lack of a better term. During an extension of a timeline, your memories may be altered. Your abilities would again be knocked back down to an acceptable level, at least to them. And this was also based on an AI-generated simulation that scares the heck out of people. There was also, 2018 was a pivotal year. In 2018, the line of Solomon's contracts expired. The covenant with the line of Solomon also expired. Many other covenants with Marduk expired. And the world was going to be our oyster in 2018. This was supposed to occur and begin between the 2nd to the 7th of December 2018. We would have then been free from the world government at that point in time. And quite frankly, those people, let's just call them, whined, moaned, and complained to the council on why humanity is not ready, and they must continue to stay in charge for a short period of time longer. At the time, we still had some others that were here, and apparently everybody concurred that this was a good idea. Now, yeah, I don't know if all of humanity would have concurred, but there were some pluses and some minuses to that. There were a lot of awakenings that happened since that time, though, and we were due within the last couple of weeks to actually have another timeline reboot. So this was part of the council meeting. Do they extend the timeline? Do they help us not extend the timeline? These were all the questions that were on the table. And we finally came up after much research and analysis on their part and on ours, pleading our case. Because remember, I'm an ambassador to this council and have been since 2016. There would be no extension. This is what all parties agreed upon, including, of course, Source. We would be moving forward into a time of no time, which is going to take, quote unquote, time. We would be moving forward into a golden age. We have been moving forward into a golden age, and humanity has grown to the point, except for the deep state, because they go backwards. They are mentally challenged on every level, humans. But the rest of us have actually decided to move forward. We have shown enough initiative that we will, believe it or not, it doesn't seem like that way to you, but we have shown enough initiative to care and love humanity as humans as a whole more than we love governments. We are also far enough along where we are not expecting a savior in our governments, the deep state or otherwise, and we are beginning to question our leadership very heavily, whether we verbalize that or not. We have also proven, let's just say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the time of the deep state and their way is over. It's over in a lot of ways because even if the council were to say humans need evil in order to find the good, because those statements have been made in the past by, let's just say, people that used to run this rock we live on, humans have come too far. We, on our side of it, are more innovative. We're more creative. We are more able to adapt, change, overcome, and strategize against our enemies more than you know. What the news reports is often incorrect. And I know that's a total shock to all of you, but it's true. So on the other side, they no longer have their fearless leaders, meaning the non-humans that drove them to do all of the things that they do on the daily. They have proven themselves to be ineffective dark leaders. No surprise there, no shock there. They have proven themselves unable and unwilling to change and live in a different way. They have proven themselves to be driving not only themselves and their governments and their systems off a cliff. They have made poor decisions. They have been out-strategized every single step of the way. Therefore, they cannot control humanity anymore. Now, that led us to another question is, does humanity need to be controlled? Well, we need to maintain new systems that are for humanity's benefit to help us to learn and grow as a whole. And what I mean by that is it's kind of the same way, and please, I'm not saying that all grown adults are children, so don't take that the wrong way, but it's kind of the same way that we love and care for our children and our grandchildren, and we help them to grow and learn how to take care of themselves, how to take care of their own families at some point in the future, how to cook, how to clean, how to do all the things they need to do in life. And we do that with love and compassion, at least most of us do. And we need to do the same thing as people who are awake and aware. We need to create systems for people to live in and to thrive in. And we have given them our ideas and our thoughts on how to do that, or shared amongst each other. And the thing about a council, it's not a, there are times where the council does serve as a court for disputes between species or planets or, even lower astral versus the upper astral. They do. But for the most part, we understand that everything that happens here on Earth currently happens everywhere else. The reverb throughout the multiverse and the omniverse is incredible. We also understand the reverb that the deep state puts out and how it's affecting other systems throughout the multiverse. And we, as a whole, that means hundreds of billions of trillions of quadrillions of species and beings throughout the multiverse have concurred that our deep state stinks. They're smelly, they're making smelly reverbs throughout the universe, and they need to go. They're not even giving proper leadership to the dark and evil things they try to do. They are not good proxies even for the dark side, even if they were to consider there to be a dark side. At this moment in time, there isn't anyone left on that side except for some ridiculous humans walking this planet that can barely tie their shoes.
Yeah, you don't want to give the reins over to those guys, right? That's what we've been saying forever. And I think it was very clear to the Universal Council that that is not a smart move and that does not benefit humanity and choosing the light in any way. The last thing Kim talks about, and I can't play a soundbite from this because we're pretty much at time for the podcast today, but she talks about something called the Crown of Glory. Now, again, this was in Saturday's report, and she got out her whiteboard, and this leads into, this was actually something that resides in Earth's core. She says it was originally there from the beginning, and it serves as a record keeper for Earth's history and events. And this crown, or the stones that are in this crown, could have been impacted by timeline changes. So the deep state basically tried to take control over these stones that are in the Crown of Glory, and they failed miserably. 9,000 of them ended up trapped in photons, kind of like a place of no place. And Kim asked Source, what do we do with these people that are trapped? And he's like, yeah, just leave them there for 100 years. Let them think about it. So I guess they're just, bye-bye. 9,000 deep state people just suspended in a photon, a place between places. That's a little crazy. But if you want to hear more about that, like I said, it's a whole whiteboard presentation, and it gets very, very detailed, and you really need to see it. There's no way I could describe it on the podcast. All right, guys, that wraps up today's episode. Again, sorry it's a little bit late getting out this week. If you want more information about who we are, what we do, visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. That will give you on-demand access if you become a member. It'll give you on-demand access to all of our content, complete news updates, our New Earth interviews, our GIA reports, and all things restoration. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.